A huge welcome to Congressman Andy Harris. He's a freedom fighter and constantly standing strong for our constitutional rights. He was elected in 2010. Congress Harris is currently the only Republican member of Maryland's Congressional delegation. Now, the Democrats would like to change that, as we all know. But we need to change that in 2022 to more Republicans. He is assigned to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Dr. Harris is also one of 21 medical professionals elected to Congress. He is a member of the GOP Doctor Caucus, of which there are 18 members. So that means there's only 3 Democrat doctors in Congress. He's a veteran, having served in the Navy and Medical Corps. His wife, Nicole Harris, is a member of RWBC and a hero, having served as a police officer. Nicole is currently a small business owner, so Congressman Harris understands that. And she builds websites for politicians, and we are so grateful to have had her help with her expertise in 2018 when Republican women of Baltimore County revamped their website. Congressman Harris does need to leave at 1 o'clock today, so we're going to go ahead and get him started. Thank you.
Thank you all so very much, and thank you everybody for being here. It's good to be back in the old 9th District, Martha, right? now you were a little further north, and this was Jim Kelly's, I guess, down here in Towson, but I represented this when I first went to the Maryland General Assembly in 1998 and learned how to be in the minority. Let me tell you something, it isn't that nice in the minority. It's still not nice in the minority in the U.S. House of Representatives right now, but I'm a patient man. I can wait until January of 2023 when we take back the House and retire Nancy Pelosi forever. So it's just, this is a wild ride in Washington. It's been a wild ride in the United States for the last 10 or 11 months, I will tell you. I kind of had the feeling America will not, the pendulum will not swing back until things get bad. And ladies and gentlemen, things are bad. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you're paying over $1 more a gallon for gas, and the president wants to blame not OPEC, not Russia, he wants to blame the oil companies. I don't get this. I mean, it's like, doesn't he understand that when President Trump was president, we controlled the price of world oil? Because we were willing to say, you know what, if you don't want to pump more oil to sell and lower the price, we'll do it. And that's what he did, and that's when we control the price of oil. Now we don't. OPEC and Russia does. Well, what does the president want to do? He wants to be an ostrich, stick his head in the sand. Ladies and gentlemen, on social media this morning, I digress so easily. On social media, we get one guy commenting, oh, that's not true because the president's going to solve it because he asked China to release their strategic oil reserves to help the United States. Like, literally this liberal thinks that's the solution, to ask our enemy to release their oil reserves. Yeah, right. Which country is the largest importer of oil in the world? China. Why in the world would they release their oil reserves to the United States? This is the craziness that the socialists who are in charge in Washington are doing. This is the type of craziness. I mean, no rational person. Can you imagine a rational person going, oh yeah, that's the solution. China's going to solve our energy by releasing their oil reserves, even though they need the oil more than we do. This is crazy. It's craziness. But let's look at the 50,000-foot view. The world is very different after the first week in November. Because in the first week in November, Americans in Virginia and New Jersey literally told the Democrats where to go. I mean, they did. The Democrats couldn't even steal the Virginia race. My gosh, I mean, Terry McAuliffe running it, you would think they would be able to have stolen that. They were so deep in the hole, they couldn't even steal that race. That's right. So they not only lost the governorship, they flipped the House of Delegates in Virginia. So now, and they have a 1-seat margin in the state Senate in Virginia, only because the senators weren't running this time. If the senators were running this year, they run in 2 years from now, we would control everything in Virginia. They literally would, the Virginians would have flipped the entire government. Now what happened in New Jersey? Because Virginia was good. I mean, Biden won by 10, but it turns out our Republican governor won by 2, so that's a 12-point shift. Remember that number. It's an important number, by the way. Remember the number 12. In New Jersey, which voted about 15 points for Biden, the Republican candidate lost by 1 point. That's a 14-point shift in 12 months. 14-point shift. Why is that important? Because right now, and during the questioning, we talk about some of the federal issues. Right now, the big issue in Maryland is what the redistricting maps are going to look like, right? Because this was noted, I'm the only Republican in the delegation. They think they're going to get me on this one, right? And I know because the inside word is the legislature is going to pass. Those of you who pay attention to the maps, they're going to pass either map 2 or 3, both of which take the Eastern Shore, bring it across the Bay Bridge into Anne Arundel County, hoping. And by the way, my house is in Cockeysville. It's way outside that district, hoping to retire me from Congress. Here's the problem, and this is where you all come in. We really do have a chance to send 2 or 3 Republicans to Washington next year. There is no question in my mind. Why? If you look at those maps, and believe me, we're analyzing those maps carefully, the worst map for me puts me in an even district, basically an even district. I mean, it's R+1, R+0, even district. But it takes 2 of the Democrats and puts them into districts that are less than D+7. Okay, D+7 means in an average year, the Democrat will win by 7 points, average year. What happened in New Jersey, that number 12 and that number 14? In Washington, the the National Republican Congressional Committee has basically said any Democrat in a district that's less than D+12 is vulnerable in next year's election.
Wow.
And believe me, there are 75 of those seats nationally, and they're about to create 2 more in Maryland. They're literally going to create 2 districts that would be in play, in addition to the district that I would, the Eastern Shore-based district. So the opportunities are going to be incredible, but we may not find out till relatively late because the legislature will pass their map, but then I think the governor's going to take that map to court. We'll have to wait for a court decision. The good news is if the court decides for the governor's map, then we got 2 seats and a 3rd competitive seat. We could send 3. And if the court doesn't and keeps the Democrats' maps, we still could get 3 seats in a good Republican year. But we're going to have to be nimble. I mean, we're going to have to go places where we didn't normally go. For instance, they draw me into Kwesi and Fume's district, all 4 Democrat maps. It's good to be with you, Ellen, on those, right? Welcome home. But I'm only a few blocks away from Dutch's district. Well, I think Dutch might have been in Washington too long.
Me too.
What do you think?
Yeah.
So I actually have the option of not running an Eastern Shore district. I can run in this Baltimore County-based district. It runs up to Cecil County. Now, I'll need a lot of help because, believe me, they draw some of this into Baltimore City because the district is proposed as Cecil County, Lower Harford County, Dundalk, Middle River, Essex, which is Republican, and it goes into some part of the east side of Baltimore County, up where Dutch lives, which is Republican, and then depends on going into the city to pick up enough Democrats. But I will tell you, we turn out to vote in Baltimore, Harford, and Cecil County, we win that district. I mean, I can win in that district. And then we have 2 other districts in the state where we can have Republicans who are well supported. This is going to be all hands on deck. But we literally could send 3 Republicans. This is not a stretch, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, it's not a stretch to send 3 Republicans to Congress next year. And let me tell you, that's the new redistricting plan. They run in those seats, they win in those seats, they will be favored in those seats next time because they're incumbents now. This is an incredibly important opportunity. We can't, look, I didn't create this opportunity. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden or whoever's running the White House created this opportunity, okay? Because they have instituted policies that are absolutely repulsive to Americans. Repulsive, all right? When Terry McAuliffe let the cat, he just let the cat out of the bag and said, look, Democrats believe parents have no say in the education of their children. I've known that for years. I mean, Ellen, right? Who controls the schools? Teachers' unions, not parents. We've known that for years. I love teachers. The teachers' unions are not good for our children. They're not good for our children.
No, they're not.
They control it. We've known that for years. Now all America knows it for years. When Terry McAuliffe invited the head of the teachers' union on his last day of the campaign, it sent the clear signal to Virginians what he thinks of who controls the schools, right? First thing. Second thing, defunding the police. What's the murder count in Baltimore today? Is it 302, 303, 304? I don't know. We're numb to it, right? We're literally numb to it.
Yep.
It's like on Monday morning we expect to see the body count from the weekend. And yet they have hundreds of police officer positions open in Baltimore County. You know, what I say, that, you know, we just passed that Build Back Better plan, which is really a Build Back Broke plan, out of the House, I guess yesterday. Days blend now. And by the way, those of you who pay attention, Kevin McCarthy, standing up and talking for 8 hours and 42 minutes, beating Pelosi's record on the House floor speech, which will stand forever, his 8-hour, 42 minutes, did a great job. One of the best lines from his speech is, that bill hires 87,000 IRS agents, but no Border Patrol agents, and I will add, and not a single policeman. Think about that.
Wow.
Think about where the priorities are by the Democrats when they pass a bill that hires 87,000 IRS agents, but not a single policeman or policewoman. Baltimore City needs about 300 or 400 of them. Just Baltimore City. No, not a penny of it in there for that. So you've got what they think of educating your children, how they think they're going to keep you safe, which is they're not, and finally, the economy. So I had a few weeks ago, some of you may have heard me tell the story, I had one of the Republican women come up to me about 3 or 4 weeks ago saying, you know, Andy, I know that's true, but how are we going to get the message out about, you know, inflation, the economy, and things like that? I said, we don't have to. Exxon's doing it every day because they got a billboard right above their gas station that has the price of gas on it, right? Now I know if you're like me, and by the way, I used to tell people, remember, I'll be as thrifty with your money as I am with mine when you send me into office. I drive past those signs every day hoping that it's going to go down instead of up. Are you the same way?
Yep.
You're like, is it like 333 or 329 today, right? Every single day Americans are reminded that it cost them $50 to $70 to fill up their tank of gas, and it didn't cost them $50 to $70 last year. Every single day they're reminded. And ladies and gentlemen, this gets worse before it gets better. I will tell you, this will get worse before it gets better. Remember the president said, oh, we're going to solve the problem of the container ships outside of LA and Long Beach. All we got to do is we just have to declare these ports open 24/7. Since he declared that, multiple choice question, is the line of ships shorter, the same, or longer? Longer. Longer! I don't think you're going to see that on CNN. It's actually gotten worse at the ports of Los Angeles, San Diego. And you go, well, how can that be? They're open 24/7. Yeah, no truckers are going to want to come in the evening because of the ridiculous trucking rules that the administration, that the federal government has, and California. That's not the solution. The solution is you decrease regulations. That's what the Trump administration figured out. The Biden administration is so beholden to the regulatory state they can't do it. They will not solve that backlog. They can't. They intellectually can't do it, because what it would take would be to for instance, to say that, you know, the longshoremen, the unions have to make some concessions, things that they will never do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to get worse before it gets better. These are the 3 big issues for next year. There's no question about it. It's your security at home, and in Maryland, you just have to point to Baltimore. That's all you got to do. I mean, we have one of the murder capitals of the world, right? And Kid Mayor doing nothing about it. He was, what did he say? He was disgusted, something like that. You know, you don't solve this problem by holding press conferences. Well, I'm just disgusted. I think it was that, maybe it was about that 79-year-old lady killed in the church. I mean, this is what's going on in Baltimore City. taxes, and they do nothing about it. They literally do nothing about it. They scratch their heads about it. So it's personal security. It's going to be the fact that you have to regain, we have to take control of our children's education again. And you've got to take this back. I mean, this is not going to be given to you. Believe me, they're not going to hand this to you on a platter. You're going to have to go to those school boards, you're going to have to go to the booths, you're going to have to get candidates onto the school board ballots, and we're going to have to work for those candidates. But in the end, the majority of Americans agree with us. They agree, and that's what they showed. That's what Virginia and New Jersey showed. And then finally, this whole economy and inflation deal. You know, your paycheck may go up, but let me tell you something. It hurts to spend $50 to $70 to fill up your tank of gas, and every American knows that. And they kind of forget, yeah, my pay went up, but why is the price of this so high? Or you go to the store the other day, and you go to the store like I do. Everything. It's 15, 20, 25% more than it was just a few months ago. Literally just, they can't change the little tags on the shelf fast enough to keep up with it. So everything is aligned. Yes, this is painful. Seeing what's going on now is painful. And you know, we won't say we told you so, but we told you so. You know, if you cancel the Keystone XL pipeline, price of oil and gas is going to go up in the country. If your idea of infrastructure in the United States does not include energy infrastructure, taking advantage of our fossil fuel advantage in the world, then the price of that stuff's going to go up. This is all predictable. You know, if you put in vaccine mandates, and don't even get me started on that, because how you could mandate a vaccine in someone who has naturally acquired immunity, which now we know is actually superior to vaccine acquired immunity, you put in these vaccine mandates and you don't realize what it does to a supply chain that's already tight. You don't have to lose 30% of your workers in order to have that supply chain collapse. You have to lose 10%. That's it, we're running tight. I mean, this country, for a whole variety of reasons, ran in, you know, just-in-time stocking for a decade now. You just take a small number of people out of that supply chain, the supply chain basically collapses, and that's what we're seeing now. So these things are all predictable. The American people, I think they figured it out. I just think they just don't believe the president. You know, when the president says a 1.75 trillion bill, which is actually a 4 trillion bill, costs nothing, I'm sorry. Americans just don't buy that. They look at that and they go, you move your lips all you want, we're not buying it. So we have a tremendous opportunity next year. And I haven't even delved into the General Assembly. But let me tell you something. The General Assembly seats are going to be, in terms of competitiveness, are going to be just like you saw in Virginia. I mean, you will flip 10 to 20% of those seats. You will. I mean, that's just going to happen. So we have to work hard. We have to be ready to take advantage of that. And of course, the governorship, you know, the wind is at the back of whoever is running is going to be our Republican candidate for governor. I mean, this is a national. We are watching a national occurrence that I don't think we've seen since the Carter days. I really don't. I mean, I think that it's analogous to that kind of movement toward the right of center Republican ideas. And you're going to see it across the board, you're going to see it across the nation, and Maryland will be no exception. We have to be ready to work harder than we've ever worked before, because for this one, you know, we only redistrict once every 10 years. We play this right this time, we'll be sitting good for 10 years. You know, if we put incumbents into office, we get behind them, we support them. This is an incredible opportunity. If you had told me a year ago that I was going to be seriously discussing whether we were going to have 3 Republicans or just 1 in Congress, I'd go, you're crazy. We can't. No, we can. We can. The Democrats are, again, it's just like they overextended on federal policies, national policies, they're overextending on these redistricting maps, and when they overextend, that's opportunity for us. So we have to be ready to take advantage of it. Anyway, with that, I'll be more than happy to spend the rest of the hour answering questions, but I do have to go. I have to go actually down to Washington to pick up my daughter at the airport. So, but anyway, yeah, Ellen.
Andy, obviously the Democrats are trying to push all this stuff through, even if they're going to lose, because they know once it's in place, we're stuck with it. What and you're on the Appropriations Committee, what can Republicans who take control of Congress do to stop spending the money that they have and these new programs that they're creating?
Sure. So let's back up one step. Fortunately, in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which was the last one we passed, the one that was merely 1.2 trillion. It's unbelievable. I mean, I just think billions was a lot to talk about. Fortunately, there are no long-term programs in that bill that we have to deal with. So that's kind of water over the bridge. I mean, yeah, it's probably, that one had a $256 billion addition to the federal debt, according to the Congressional Budget Office, and that was probably accurate because we're not creating any new programs. There's no smoke and mirrors in that bill. It's just clear, yeah, we were adding $250 billion to our debt, and the Democrats didn't care, and 13 Republicans in the House, unfortunately. This bill is very different. This Build Back Better bill is very different. Remember, it started as a $3.5 trillion bill, and then because Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema said, well, that's way too much, so they kind of whittled it down to 1.5 to 1.75 to somewhere in that ballpark. But they did it not by taking out a lot of programs, but by cutting the duration of those programs, how long those programs are going to last. So for instance, on the child tax credit, which by the way does not have a work requirement, it is a totally refundable tax credit. That means it's like it's like a welfare check, okay? We've been through that before. I thought we did away with that in the 1990s, but it is, it's popped up again in the Build Back Better plan. So that was 3 years originally at about, that's $300 billion a year, so that's, $900 billion. So they cut $600 billion out by just taking it to 1 year, assuming, of course, that Congress will extend it, every year. So, so the way this bill is structured, a program like that is a 1-year program, but the CBO says, well, you're going to raise taxes over 10 years, so over 10 years, that will be paid for. Well, first of all, they overestimated the administration what the tax collection is going to be. The final on that bill is $367 billion short. It will add $367 billion to our deficit, to our debt, I should say, over 10 years. And the amazing thing is those moderate Democrats who insisted that we delay this until we get the CBO score to make sure the CBO score correlates with what the White House says. They're only about $500 billion off, those two estimates. They came out and the CBO said, yes, $367 billion, and every moderate Democrat except one said, oh, okay, I'm on board with that. Like, wait a minute, you told us that's why all those moderate Democrats are going to be in trouble. Because they said they weren't going to vote for a bill that actually increased the federal debt, and then they did. Nancy Pelosi convinced them to do it. It's called walking the plank. I mean, she's great at having her members basically walk the plank for her. But let me tell you something, those districts, that will not play well. When you have one of them, Stephanie Murphy in Florida, one of the most vulnerable Democrats in Congress, basically saying the day after, well, I voted for it because they're going to cut it in the Senate. Okay, you explain that to your people. Yeah, I voted for it because, my two Republican senators are going to cut it. Well, why don't we just have a Republican House member and cut to the chase, I mean, you can't fool people this way. So, what we would have to do, and if we have large majorities, I think we can do it, is we have to just say, we're not going to fund it more than 1 year. Okay, it's passed. 1 year, there's child tax credit, we're not renewing it. Is that a tough decision to make? Yeah, it's a tough political decision to make. The Democrats are smart. Look, this is the way you do it. If you want this program to last forever and you don't really want to pay for it, this is the way you do it. Make a 1-year program, the Congressional Budget Office rules, they have to score revenue over 10 years. Yeah, it's smoke and mirrors, all smoke and mirrors. The Wharton School, which is I went to the University of Pennsylvania for 2 years. Let me tell you something, the University of Pennsylvania is not a conservative bastion, okay? The Wharton School in Philadelphia, the business school, this is one of the top 2 business schools in the country, actually evaluated this plan and said it actually was going to cost more than $4 trillion because they made the correct assumption that a lot of these programs are not going to be stopped after 1, 2, or 3 years. They're going to continue forever, but the revenue is fixed. I mean, once you raise these taxes, it's raised for 10 years. So look, these are economists, and they're like, no, this is actually over $4 trillion, most of it unpaid for, most of it added to the federal debt. Now, by the way, for those of you whose favorite Democrat tells you that the Trump tax cuts added to the deficit, right? Remember that it's like 1 trillion, 2 trillion, now they're like it's 20 trillion. I mean, the Democrats are amazing. Remind them that October's revenue receipts in the United States were the highest ever. Ever. Because actually the way taxes work is if you cut taxes, you actually increase revenue. It worked during the Kennedy years, it worked with the Reagan tax cut, and now it's worked with the Trump tax cut. You actually increase revenue by stimulating economic activity. And just ask them, look them straight in the eye and go, well, then why did we have record revenue last month? If cutting taxes was going to increase our deficit, why did we have record revenue? They'll look at you with a strange face because they didn't hear that on CNN. CNN didn't say that, but it's the truth, and they can look it up. So we have, again, it's going to be painful, but if we send large enough majorities to the House, we send, and now, by the way, those of you real political junkies, the Cook Political Report just flipped three of the Senate seats from lean Democrat to toss-up. Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. So Warnock, Kelly, and the new. So the 3 freshman Democrats from those states are now in the toss-up category. We win those seats, we take back the Senate as well. And then in 2024, we're going to elect either Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis to the White House. It's just that clear. It's going to be one of the two. I don't care what anybody says, one of those 2 of them is going to be the next president of the United States. And then hopefully we can have the second Trump term. And it really doesn't make a difference whether it's Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. I know Ron so well. God bless him. I mean, he is just, what a thorn in the president's side. I mean, going to sign that bill in Brandon, Florida. I mean, God, it's great. It's great. I love Ron. That was even better than I even think he could come up with. But no, he's really good. Yes.
We do have a question that's coming in from the Facebook feed.
Sure.
And the question is, how can we help the congressman from not getting his medical license revoked, which does kind of fall into all of these bills that you have sponsored.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to look at it.
Yeah. So
natural immunity is real, by the way. no matter what Dr. Fauci says.
So how can we support?
I think it'll be fine. I think the medical board is going to be reasonable about this. I mean, you get some kooks who file complaints all the time against your medical license. I'm surprised they just didn't dismiss it, but I think they just have to run through the process. I think it'll be fine because there are. For a variety of reasons. I mean, so I looked back when they sent this complaint. I'm like, let me go back, look on the Board of Physicians. Did they like print a policy or something? That I just didn't pay attention to or something. So I pulled back something they published probably in the middle of last year that discussed some drugs like hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and one other drug, and I don't remember what it was. It was not ivermectin. Basically saying that, but ivermectin was not mentioned on that. Basically saying, well, a lot of physicians in the state are prescribing this for their friends, families, relatives, things like this, in large numbers. And basically, the bottom line, we don't think that's a good idea. So wait a minute. So how many of those licenses? I mean, obviously they knew that large numbers of physicians are doing it. It's okay. Did you take action against any of them? No, of course they didn't take action against any of them. So I don't think they're going to take action against me. But just the idea, that should worry you to no end. Just the idea, and by the way, it's an anonymous complaint, which worries me a little bit because in America you're actually supposed to know who your accuser is. Especially when they go after something like your license. I mean, this is your livelihood. This is someone literally who's making a complaint, potentially that could take away your livelihood, and it's an anonymous complaint. And that's wrong, and we should change that law, actually. That's just wrong in America. But they did, they are, but I don't think anything's going to come of it. Yes, ma'am.
What's the chance of the no vaccine mandate act getting support from Democrats too? I mean, are there Democrats who are willing to help you get that passed?
No, probably not. I mean, they're pretty party line on that. I don't understand that because I think they're going to, You know, well, I shouldn't say that, because I think the White House is actually beginning to walk it back a little bit. I mean, there's a reason why they delayed that, the OSHA date from December, first week in December to first week in January, because I think that obviously they realize the supply chain issues with the OSHA vaccine mandate are tremendous. My prediction is they keep on walking it back. Is, you know, and as they walk it back, look, those of you who are businesses, and I've talked to many business owners about this, you know, they're like, well, look, I can't wait till the last minute. I'm probably just going to have to, you know, start making my employees get the mandate. So this idea of just walking it back month at a time kind of accomplishes the same goal in a very roundabout, not so nice way, I'll say. I mean, look, be honest. I mean, if you want a mandate, well, they tried to do the mandate. It's illegal. I mean, the OSHA mandate is illegal. You talk about the luck of the draw. I just found out this last night. You know, the Fifth Circuit put the stay on it, but there were, I think they said, 8 or 10 other circuits where cases were filed. So what they did is they put, and I don't know where they did this drawing, but they put like numbers in a little container of all the circuits. Somebody picks out the number, and that's the circuit that's going to look at the case and make the decision nationally. And of course, that will be appealed to the Supreme Court by whoever loses that. They picked out the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Sixth Circuit has 10 Republican judges and 6 Democrats on it. Okay? They can. I know how this is going. I know how this is going to turn out because actually the panel in the Fifth Circuit unanimously said. I mean, even the Democrat on it said that that stay was there. So that's gone. That's the OSHA mandate. The more worrisome mandate is the federal workers and federal contractors. That's very, very worrisome. And there are a group of us. In fact, the Freedom Caucus just took the position 2 days ago that we should pass no funding bill that includes funding for any of those mandates. And remember, we have a first weekend, we have December 3rd. Our government funding runs out on December 3rd. The Congress has to take action in the first week of December to continue the government functioning. Otherwise, you have the quote government shutdown. So there were a group of us like, yeah, if we continue it, that's fine, but we got to put a proviso in there that it you can't pay for vaccine mandates. That could be a pressure point because, again, it'll be, I think more people are realizing, and by the way, the majority of Americans are with us, those of you who pay attention to polling, the majority of Americans say you should not lose your job over a vaccine mandate. I mean, look, thank God this is still America. You know, people still believe in individual rights and freedoms. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about the CMS mandate, the likelihood that that will be?
So the CMS mandate, yeah, on healthcare, again, I kind of lump that with the government mandate. Unfortunately, that one has an earlier date, doesn't it, for compliance? I thought it might.
December 6th.
What is it? That's in December 6th. So yeah, they didn't let that slide. The healthcare CMS mandate. Look, I think it's such a strange. If you think about it, what you're telling people who should have the most information and the best ability to make that decision, right? I mean, look, we're telling healthcare workers, okay? People who work, and by the way, it's worded, you have to work in a Medicare-funded facility. So those basically are nursing homes and hospitals, okay? Basically nursing. So these are the places that got crushed with COVID, right? And the workers there, some of them saying, you know what? Well, first of all, a lot of them, because if you look at the number who actually have had COVID, it's actually pretty high. And of course, I mean, you've been exposed to COVID people all the time. You probably have had it. And a lot of them are like, wait a minute, I have naturally acquired immunity, why are you making me get a vaccine? So to me, the first thing they should do is just say, okay, if you can demonstrate that you have naturally acquired immunity, you take an antibody test, you have antibodies, you take a T-cell test, you have T-cells, then that's fine. But they aren't. And to a lot of healthcare, this is why a lot of healthcare workers, like, look, some are fine, they're like, yeah, everybody should get the, fine, God bless you, you want the vaccine, look, I've done vaccine clinics, okay? You want the vaccine, I'm more than glad to put a vaccine in your arm. You don't want the vaccine, I'm not putting it in your arm, okay? Because actually as a physician, I've been trained to say, if you don't want it, you shouldn't get it because you have the right to determine your health care. Okay, this is actually, look, this is what they teach doctors all the time. And yet you have leading doctors now, including the AMA, coming out and saying, no, vaccine mandates are a good thing. You're going to break the faith Americans have in doctors, actually. if what you're saying is that your doctor should be able to look you in the eye and say, no, you have to do this. This is not the way it works. It never has, and it shouldn't. So I'm a little worried about that because I think that common sense is not yet prevailing there on that. But the idea that you fire a healthcare worker who has been in that trench for over a year, taking care of COVID people, you know, subjected to the risk, and you're going to make them get vaccinated. That whole idea, you know, I just don't like it. And somebody probably say that because I said that, my license should be taken away too. But no, seriously, by the way, this is the second. I mean, there was actually another complaint earlier because I went out and I said, you know, maybe you shouldn't have all these mandates. And the board is like, well, you know, when you're a public, yes, you're a doctor, but you're a public official, and therefore what you say could be construed as medical advice. Okay. All right. So if I don't toe the line of what, you know, somebody says, I don't care if it's Dr. Fauci or the State Department of Health, so if I don't toe that line, you know, I can't give medical advice. I mean, this is a crazy world, ladies and gentlemen. It's crazy. This is totally upside down. Don't even get me started on 5 to 11-year-olds. This is unbelievable that you are gonna mandate, and people are talking about mandates in California, of course San Francisco is, that you're gonna mandate a 5-year-old who has, if they don't have a contributing comorbidities called, you know, something that puts them at high risk, their risk of this is literally less than the flu, and you're going to require them to get a vaccine where you only have 3-month follow-up on the study. I mean, you know, we go for adults. Look, for adults, we now have a year and a half before the big group, the 40,000 people. So we're kind of, yeah, a year and a half. We kind of had an idea. For the 5 to 11-year-olds, they were studied for 3 months, 3,000 for 3 months. That's it. And now we're going to inject millions based on 3,000 for 3 months. You know, the FDA usually requires 2 years follow-up on vaccines to evaluate long-term safety. This is a novel vaccine, okay? So you go, well, actually in normal days you might actually want more than that, and you're going to mandate it. I mean, this is crazy. Yes, sir. Okay, you're next. You're in line. Yeah.
Isn't the Nuremberg Code still in effect?
Look, you got no argument with me that the government should not mandate health care, not mandate a procedure for you to get, and especially, remember, for 5 to 11-year-olds, it's an EUA, it's an emergency use authorization, which means you don't know, literally, if you look at the product insert on an EUA, I should bring, one of the congressmen has it, it's hilarious. It's a sheet that's about this big by this big, so it's 3 feet by 2 feet. And you know, and most of you don't know, but when you buy a medicine, like when the drugstore gets it or a physician's office gets it, there's this little product insert where you get this big sheet of paper folded up into this little thing, you know, it's amazing. So this product, the product insert that is shipped with the EUA drugs has only the name of the drug in the middle, and literally the other part of that 2x3 sheet is blank. Like literally it's blank. I mean, you have to see one of these, and you're like, why is it blank? Well, because the FDA hasn't said what the side effects are, and they haven't done all this, right? Because it's an emergency use authorization. It's for emergency use when you think that is a person who's at greater risk of without the drug than they are with the drug. That's an individual decision. That should always be an individual decision.
But emergency use is only if you don't have other drugs.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's correct.
We have other drugs.
Well, but the FDA has it. Oh, you're going to get me started down this. Okay. How much time? Okay. I still got 15 minutes. Don't even get me started. So 3 weeks ago, a huge Brazilian study gets published on fluvoxamine, which is a drug. It's what's called a selective serotonin receptor inhibitor, an SSRI drug, which are normally antidepressants. In this case, fluvoxamine is particularly for OCD. It's the drug of choice for patients with obsessive compulsive disease. It's a centrally acting, central nervous system acting drug, but it has anti-inflammatory properties. So they do a huge study in Brazil, randomized clinical trial, the way you're supposed to, the way the FDA says, yeah, these are the studies you're supposed to do, show that if you take this drug for 5 days, and you take it, you're not just assigned to the arm where you're supposed to, but you actually took it, it's like a 90% decrease in hospitalization and severe illness. 90%, okay? Well, where is it? Oh, by the way, it's generic, and it costs $4 for the course of the drug.
That's why it's $5,000.
Yeah, that should be a little hint here. So, how many of you have read about this widely in the press? No, right? What have you read about? The Merck drug, right? Which has a similar effectiveness. Actually, the Merck is maybe a little less effective, $700 for the course of the drug. The Pfizer drug, which is similar effectiveness, $500 for the course of the drug. The federal government just signed a $5 billion contract with Pfizer to begin producing that drug. Okay? And it's being kind of pushed through the FDA system. You're like, wait a minute, we got a $4 drug that is also good for this. Why aren't we pushing this through the system? So I actually discussed this with the acting FDA commissioner. Janet Woodcock's her name, she's the acting commissioner. I'm good at digress again. Okay, so 2 weeks ago I got a point. Oh, I remember. We got you. Still have 14 minutes left. 2 weeks ago I got appointed. Unfortunately, one of our members gets railroaded in an FBI investigation. Jeff Fortenberry from Nebraska, one of the most honest people I know, gets indicted by the FBI for lying to the FBI about an investigation into campaign finance. Notice he wasn't indicted about a campaign finance issue. It was what I call the Mike Flynn indictment, which is you get indicted for lying to the FBI agents. By the way, if any of you ever have an FBI agent knock on your door wanting to talk to you, don't say a word. Like literally don't say. The trouble with Congressman Fortenberry is he's too nice a guy. This guy's a trusting guy. He actually was in the seminary for a couple of years, okay? This is one of the nicest guys I know in Congress. He doesn't think there's a bad bone in anybody's body. So he actually cooperated with the FBI. And he goes, they're devious, they're doing all kinds of things. So they indict him. So by the rules of the House, if you're indicted, you have to step off all your committees. He was the ranking member, the highest ranking Republican on the Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee. I was on that subcommittee, kind of the second highest member, and they elevated me to ranking member. Well, let me tell you something. You get a whole bunch of new friends when you become the senior person on that, the senior Republican on one of those subcommittees, especially when it looks like you guys we're going to win the House next time, and I will become the chairman of that subcommittee right after the next election. So I get a call from Janet Woodcock, who never called me when she was when I was just a mere member of the subcommittee. How are you? Anything we can do for you? Whatever. And I brought up the question of this. I'm like, I'm very worried about this because we have a $4 drug with tremendous randomized clinical trial in Brazil, big numbers. And it seems to be effective. And she's like, yeah, it did seem to be effective in that trial. And it is in one of our trials. We have what's called the Active 6 trial. We actually have a trial going on in the United States where that's one of the arms of therapy. Okay. And I'm sure if that trial shows that it's good, we'll move forward. So because you got Google, I Googled that trial. Look on do you know when that trial's going to end? Any guesses? December of next year. That's when the U.S. trial is going to end. And here the FDA commissioner says, once that trial is over, we might. Ladies and gentlemen, we got COVID with us. It ain't going away, okay? I'm sorry. In many countries in the world, the number of people who now get COVID, there are more vaccinated people than unvaccinated people who get it. We have to have a therapeutic. Ideally, right, we have to have ideally something that's cheap and widely available.
Yep.
Fluvoxamine, literally, you could go to the drugstore today and get it. Because it's widely available. It's safe. It's off patent, which means millions and millions of people have taken it. It's off patent. And the FDA is a stumbling block. Why is the FDA a stumbling block? Because it's a generic drug. There is no big drug company beating down the FDA's door every day saying, could you please license this drug? Could you please give us an EUA? Could you please get it? Because there's no drug company going to make billions of dollars off of this. I'm sorry, I didn't used to think this way. I've gotten very cynical in the last year and a half. Very, very cynical. That's the way this world works. Doc, I gotta get you second. We're going in the back, yeah.
Okay, I got a whole thing in here. The big things that are breaking my heart right now are those people that are in January 6th that have been no due process, and then also voting machines,
Yep.
Afghanistan, and big tech.
Oh my gosh, you got a long list there. Let me dispense with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is one thing that Americans, one place where Americans got the message that this administration is totally incompetent. Just totally incompetent. They don't understand the way the world works. So they tried to get that behind us as quickly as possible, and unfortunately they probably did. Americans don't have a very long memory. So that's unfortunate. What was your fourth one?
I had the January 6th big
No, that was your first one.
Machines.
Voting machines was your second. Your fourth was high tech. High tech, look, we're going to do, this is going to be an unholy alliance actually among the real liberals and the real conservatives, where both of them don't trust these big high tech companies. And I think eventually, when we take back the House, I think we're going to join with a group of liberals, and we're going to pass constraints on high tech. Let me talk about voting machines. Yeah, we got to do it. I mean, high tech is just way, way, way too powerful. Plus, we're finding out what they've done. Let me talk about voting machines. So in Maryland, this is interesting, because in Maryland, of course, and I sat on the committee, the election committee, back when I was in the House of, in the state Senate, where we learned that any electronic machine that counts ballots can be manipulated. Any machine. Yep. So the state, and you all remember, we used to have those machines that were totally electronic. You actually voted on an electronic machine. There was no paper ballot. You were totally trusting that the chain of custody of your vote was not going to be hacked, right? You were. And we had Johns Hopkins, I remember, I don't remember the fellow's name, a professor who said, yeah, me and my fellows, we hacked into that system. It took us about 15 minutes, and we showed you, and we know exactly how you can do it, so it would change a certain number of votes. Like every fifth vote for the Republican would go Democrat, or every fifth vote for a Democrat would go Republican. You would never know, because there's no paper ballot. So what do we do? So we have a paper ballot now, right? In every jurisdiction in Maryland, you vote on a paper ballot, you feed it into a machine, the machine creates an image of the ballot, a scanned image of the ballot, and then it reads that scanned image. But it counts, but that machine also counts. And any machine that counts the ballots can be hacked to systematically change the count. So in Maryland, you're like, okay, but we have the paper ballot. But we never count the paper ballot. So there are actually some irregularities in the last election, because a huge number of inactive voters voted in the last election. And the Voter Integrity Project actually has looked at Maryland. So it turns out, the Democrat vote, for instance, was about 35% higher in a lot of counties than you would have predicted it would have been. A lot of these inactive voters, they haven't voted for 16 years, and now they voted. Well, I don't know, maybe the Democrats, because, oh, by the way, Zuckerbucks were actually used in, I think, 20 of the 23 counties in Maryland. Like, literally, Zuckerberg was in Maryland paying to manipulate elections. I didn't even know that. I didn't know 20 of the 23 counties. So what I'm going to propose, and I'll probably call for in the next 2 weeks, is we go into a Republican-controlled county and we just count all the ballots. We literally have a forensic audit of every paper ballot in that county. It has to be done. Look, it could reveal that the Democrats are just much better at us than turning out voters who haven't voted in a long time. It could be that the counts will correlate exactly. Great. We got our work cut out for us, because we know what they can do. We got to do the same thing. We got to find the Republicans who haven't voted in 16 years to get them to turn out. But we need to do it somewhere. We need to do a large-scale forensic audit, and not the whole state, because that's very expensive, but you go into one jurisdiction where you've seen this kind of trend, and Queen Anne's County is a great example, and you go ahead and you just do a forensic audit in one county. The Voter Integrity Project says they'll actually raise the money to do it, so I'm pretty convinced if we go into a local jurisdiction, Republican controlled, we just get the Republicans in control and say, yeah, we're going to audit this case, we're going to do an audit of the ballots. And we need to do that. The last one, January 6th, look, this is I thought Eric Holder, you couldn't get a worse attorney general than Eric Holder, but Biden found Merrick Garland. That's all I can tell you. Look, McConnell on his headstone when he dies should be, I killed the Merrick Garland, Supreme Court nomination. I mean, that should be one of the things he's remembered for, because God forbid Merrick Garland was sitting on the Supreme Court right now. I mean, his true colors have come out. The Department of Justice is responsible for holding those people. Many of them not indicted. Many of them have no charges against them. The charges sometimes are not, they're trespass charges. That's not a violent crime. Liberals for years have said, oh my God, you shouldn't have bail for anybody, you shouldn't put anybody in prison who's nonviolent, yet they're imprisoning people even before charging. When nonviolent crimes are probably what the result of a lot of it is going to come up with. It's wrong. It's just wrong on many levels. Unfortunately, we control none of the wheels in Washington. I mean, they have the House, they have the Senate, they have the presidency. The president has appointed a Department of Justice Attorney General who doesn't really care. He should, he doesn't. And the real investigations will occur when we take back, let me tell you, we will investigate January 6th when we take back the House, and part of it will be the malfeasance of the Department of Justice to hold people for this long against their constitution. They're still Americans. I'm sorry, that is not Guantanamo, okay? They want you to think it's Guantanamo, that jail, that DC jail where they're holding these people. These are not. These are not. And we're going to have to be patient on that. Unfortunately for those people, because we don't control any of the levers. We don't control any of them. But after next January, we will control them. No, I got the doc in the back. Sandy. Yeah.
I just want to push a little back on that. Where is Republican leadership in the House and in the Senate yelling about these issues?
Yeah.
The border, the weapons.
Did you not listen to Kevin McCarthy for 8 hours and 42 minutes?
That's one guy.
I know.
Yeah. 13 Republicans who voted with the Democrats and made that infrastructure bill pass.
Right.
Yes.
What the hell?
We have feckless, uniparty leadership for the most part.
Rhinos.
Party. And I'm sorry, I know these people have done some good things, but when it comes to defining issues of this country, they are fellow travelers with a liberal communist socialist.
Look,
She's right.
you're not going to get too much of an argument from me. Look, I'm in the Freedom Caucus, okay? We feel like outsiders looking in, okay? Because we push for a lot of things, and it's interesting because sometimes we'll push for something and it won't happen for, well, okay, I'll tell you an example. We were the ones who stood up and said Liz Cheney should lose her position. When she voted for the impeachment of the president, she should lose her position. And the argument, and at first, they rejected our position. As you know, the first time we brought it up, it was sent to committee in the conference where it died. And then the leader had a discussion with Ms. Cheney. Ms. Cheney didn't change her tune, and a month later, all of a sudden, yeah, we got to remove her as she was the conference chairwoman at that time. So the principle has to be, and by the way, we just had the same discussion this week about one of the 13. Because one of the 13 is what's called a ranking member of a committee, which is the senior Republican on a committee. It's Homeland Security Committee, by the way. It's John Katko from New York. He would become the chairman when we take over the majority, but he is the leader of that committee. And I brought this up at the Freedom Caucus. I said, look, our argument against him not being punished for this is that he is a member of leadership. He is the Republican leader on that committee. That's the only committee that discussed Homeland Security. Therefore, he's a leader. A leader should never take a position against the majority of his conference, ever. That should be part of being a leader. You cannot take a position against the majority of your conference. Just like Liz Cheney should have resigned from that position when she was willing to take a position contrary to the majority of the conference. Look, the majority of the conference, we are a right-of-center conference. We are a conservative conference. Not everybody. We're a conservative conference. You want to be in leadership, that's fine. You got to be conservative. You have to vote conservative. You don't vote conservative, fine. You can be a member, but you can't be a leader. That's the way we have to do it. So there's some of us, not me, because I think you go after that person. You send a clear message, because there's some of us who say, wait a minute, when we're in charge, this is what the Freedom Caucus is going to do. The Freedom Caucus is going to push against leadership and occasionally take positions contrary to leadership, but we don't want to create a precedent where just taking a position against leadership is enough to be punished by removal of committees. They look, because I voted against a rule once. Voting against a rule, my God, in the House, like, oh, nobody votes against a rule. Yeah, I voted against a rule once, and nonetheless, I wasn't removed from committee. I, in fact, became a ranking member of the subcommittee. We know there has to be a little wiggle room in there, but a clear message that if you want to do that kind of stuff, that's great. You're never going to be a leader in this Republican Party, the Conservative Party. I share the same frustration. I think that was a leadership issue, not getting those 13 to vote that way. And the deal, and this is kind of insider baseball, but the deal was supposed to be that none of those 13 were supposed to vote until the Democrats put up 218 votes. In other words, if they couldn't pass it on their own, the deal was none of those 13 were supposed to vote. And John Katko was one of the first votes up on the board. That's another reason to punish the, you can't be a leader and take a position that contrary to the majority of your conference. And hand victory to the
Why did they do it
Democrats on
then?
this.
13 of them.
They thought that's the vote in their district, that was vote for their district. And look, you occasionally vote for your district, but for a vote that big, and it's so weird. Ellen, you know this. Martha, you know this. You're in the legislature. An important bill gets defeated on the floor. What happens? They bring it back to committee. They fix it so they have enough votes to pass it. That's the way a legislature works. So I get tired of these people like, well, you voted against Tien. Don't you want any projects in Maryland? Yeah, I want projects in Maryland. If it goes down, they bring it back to the floor in better shape and they get a majority. That's the way legislatures are supposed to work. So the excuse of, well, I had to vote for this because it's for my district. No, you get another crack at it. Believe me, that bill was the transportation bill. That first infrastructure bill was the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Half of it was our usual every 5-year transportation bill. We always passed the transportation bill. Something was going to be passed. So that held no water in my mind. Yes.
It's insidious,
What do I got?
one thing that really bothers me is
I got to go after this question.
For 5 and 12-year-olds giving them vaccines, they're going to pay them $100 to do it. And in the same time, we have open borders where we have fentanyl in this country. To me, to psychologically train a child, yeah, I'll pay you to take a drug. Meanwhile, open borders are there, and the suicide rate is terrible amongst kids. I think open borders is one of the main issues with Americans today.
So I agree with you, and I think the connection we have to make is that we have surpassed 100,000 opioid deaths now. About 2/3 are due to fentanyl, and I can go into the medicine because I use fentanyl in the operating room. I mean, it's an anesthetic drug. It's been there for 30 years. It's a great drug used properly, and it kills you if you use it improperly. And we know that because tens of thousands of Americans are killed by fentanyl. Fentanyl crosses our southern border. That's how it gets in. It used to get in through the mail. We kind of solved that problem. Now it comes across our southern border. And that's why Kevin, if you heard Kevin, I mean, he went after this big time. Because he's like, look, we have 100,000 deaths, a lot of fentanyl deaths, 87,000 IRS agents, not a single border patrol person to cut down the amount of fentanyl that comes across our southern border. I couldn't agree with you more. That's the argument we have to make. The southern border, even if you like immigrants, my parents are immigrants, I like immigrants, you come here legally, and you certainly enforce the border because drugs that are killing our youth, literally killing tens of thousands of our youth, crosses that southern border. I left the southern border off, the top 3 issues. That's number 4, by the way. The Freedom Caucus, by the way, is going to release our contract with America in about 2 weeks. And as we order them, that's the one I said would be the 4th position, is actually secure our border. So it's fighting, you have to fight inflation in the economy, you have to refund the police, you have to give parental guidance back, parental control back over children's education, and you have to control our border. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to run. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.